Welcome to the Department of Life Sciences podcast for Women at Imperial Week 2026. International Women's Day 2026 centres on the theme Give to Gain, the idea that progress happens when we intentionally give respect, voice, care, knowledge, opportunities, and resources to others. In a university community, that giving doesn't only apply in lecture theatres or laboratories. It happens in offices, technical spaces, meetings, emails, and everyday interactions that keep the system running. We're bringing together voices from across the Department of Life Sciences, from administration, technical teams, research, and teaching, to reflect on what giving has meant in their working lives and what we can all gain when equity and support are shared responsibilities. In this episode, we are joined by Kirsty. Kirsty, could you tell us a little bit about your role at Imperial and a fun fact or maybe a part of your role that you find most rewarding?
Yes, of course. Hi, Josh. Thanks for inviting me to chat with you. So I'm an academic researcher. So that means that I have research roles and responsibilities where the core activities might be planning research projects, securing funding, data analysis, writing for publication in journals. Within part of this role, I'm also an active member of the PAIN community. So I review grants and original research articles, contribute to scientific programme committees for national and international conferences, and present my work, my team's work at those conferences too. The important part of this aspect of my role is to have an impact influencing society as well as contributing to academic knowledge. And I also supervise in my role, so I mentor PhD candidates and postdoctoral researchers. But my other hat incorporates teaching roles and responsibilities. So, for example, core activities would include curricular development, delivering undergraduate and postgraduate lectures, leading seminars, and as well as assessment, so marking and providing feedback, and also student engagement. So I provide academic guidance and pastoral support to students. In terms of a fun fact, a part of my job that I enjoy the most, I actually really like the fact that the job incorporates these two different strands. I love the research element, that moment where a student or a member of the lab has collected some amazing data that we can all get really excited about. But I also love interacting with students and teaching and sharing knowledge and sharing those experiences of academic life. So I think I'm very lucky to have these two very different avenues of work that are equally rewarding.
Amazing. And what would you say kind of motivated you to pursue a career in academia?
It's probably a rather boring answer. I mean, at school, it was just that I got my best grades in science. And so then, after my GCSEs, when determining A levels, I decided to do maths, chemistry, biology, simply because that's what I'd been good at. And then when I was doing my A levels, then people are asking what you want to do next, and I didn't have a clue. But I knew that I wanted to come to London, so I applied to UCL to do pharmacology because I thought that would be a way to keep that interest going in terms of, I suppose, biological sciences. And then during my undergraduate degree, people were saying, well, what are you going to do next? And then I applied to Imperial to do a Master of Research because I thought it would give me that breathing space to determine whether research was even for me. So I came to Imperial in 2003 to do my MRes, and I loved it. And then I stayed in one of those labs to do my PhD, which was in a topic that didn't really catch my imagination, so I didn't massively enjoy it. But I was always still in touch with my personal tutor back at UCL who ran a neuropharmacology research lab. He was a pain neuroscientist, and he said, why don't you come and work in the lab for a year? Don't leave academia yet, just come and work in the lab. Let's see how you get on while you figure out what you're going to do next. And so I went there for a year and ended up staying there 9 years because I just was introduced to this fabulous world of pain neuroscience and I loved it so much. So yeah, that's the journey of how I've ended up as an academic. And it came from really being a journey of I didn't know what else I was good at. And so I kind of stuck in that lane. And this is where it's led me to.
I mean, I think that resonates and will resonate with a lot of people that are listening, especially students, right? We all have especially in the UK education system, you're asked to specialize so early on. You know, at 16 years old, pick your A levels, and this is going to determine what degree you can do.
Yeah, I think that's a really important message to get across. And I was speaking to the students who were on the module I convened, Systems Neuroscience. We had a social lunch at the start of the module, you know, for everyone to get to know each other. And I was speaking to these students who were talking about their concern around what modules to choose during their undergraduate degree because they weren't sure what path they were going to follow with their career. And when I explained to them that actually I did my PhD in epigenetic mechanisms of red blood cell development, and until I finished my PhD, I hadn't had a single lecture on pain or any expertise in that kind of neuropharmacology, only to then go on to become a professional pain neuroscientist. I think it really surprised them that even as late as finishing your PhD, you can still take this complete turn and discover a completely new career path and topic of enjoyment. So yeah, I think it's about realizing that actually we're never closing doors behind us, because we can always reverse and make a new decision that takes us on a different road.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it. We have this bottleneck maybe at 16, 18 years old, but actually from there, it's more about you as a learner, you as being adaptable and flexible and thinking, okay, I've done this epigenetics of red blood cells, but actually I've got so many skills that could be applied to pain. And it's not just about the topic knowledge that you have, but it's the techniques that you have. It's the resiliency that you've built during your PhD.
Yeah, and actually for me, I think that was the most important thing I learned as a PhD student was resilience, you know, and how to cope with failure and how, you know, that experimental outcomes, they are what they are. You know, our lab motto is, it is what it is. And so actually you're absolutely right that quickly you realize that those characteristics can be applied to pretty much any domain within sciences, you know, life sciences, whatever, or indeed outside of science. These are good characteristics for most jobs, I would say.
Yeah, and I say to my personal tutees all the time, education never ends. You can go back and do a master's degree, go back and do a PhD at any point in your life. You don't have to do it in your 20s. You don't, you know, depending on what type of career you want to have, you don't have to. I've taught master's students that are 86 years old that have retired and decided they want to do biodiversity despite being a banker for 50 years, you know. And International Women's Week this year has this kind of theme of give to gain. And what I'd quite like to know about is, what does this theme, I guess, mean to you?
Yeah, so this is a really difficult question to address, but it's one that's really important to address properly. And when I've thought about this question, give to gain resonates with me on two levels. The first being that since coming to Imperial 13 months ago, I've been lucky enough to be on the receiving end of active support and collaboration from multiple members of our community. For example, everyone has been willing to share their knowledge and provide mentorship on many aspects of college life. And there's a clear consensus that fostering this supportive environment will create success rather than deplete it. So I've seen and been on the receiving end of these intentional acts of generosity that's reduced my stress around being a newcomer, and also strengthened my relationships with these kind members of the department. The second way I suppose it resonates with me is based on the way I then try and interact with others. So that encompasses offering support on projects and hopefully investing in the positive culture of the department. And I have a really strong pay it forward mentality. I've benefited greatly in the past from individuals who've given me their time and support, and I'm careful to contribute to a positive, kind, supportive environment. And these acts have a tangible benefits that we see. This can relate to productivity, but also better leadership and trust. You know, I like to leave notes of appreciation for my team and to give shout outs for those who've done something brilliant in meetings. And this could be a new experiment that's been performed or a really tasty cake that someone baked and brought in to share with everyone. So I think it's about having this positive impact on well-being and morale for those around us, making the workplace a pleasant place to be.
I mean, that's fantastic. I think these small acts of appreciation, as leaving a note saying actually you baked an amazing cake, can make somebody's day when their experiments have been failing for so long, but they've got this success of that they're bringing to the lab. And even if it's just a cake, it's not just a cake, you know?
Absolutely. It's never just a cake. It's a moment to sit down and appreciate something delicious and speak about, what maybe you're doing that evening. It pulls you back to real life, I think, when you're sat around having a cup of tea with people, as opposed to standing, over someone in the lab or looking over a lab book. And it's those moments that allow us to remember that, we're all part of a team and we're all humans who go home at the end of the day to try and relax and switch off and do nice things like bake a cake for team members. I mean, how kind is that? So yeah, I think reflecting on and acknowledging the successes of individuals in these varied ways, whether it's experimental success or just the success of being kind and doing things for others, is really important.
Great. I mean, I think they're all really great examples. And I wondered whether it could be at any point in your career that, is there a time when somebody has, say, given you support that has made a real difference to the way that you work?
Oh, absolutely. And for me, it's an obvious and it's a standout example is Professor Tony Dickinson at UCL, who, as an undergraduate, was this incredible tutor, so kind and supportive. And I stayed in touch with him throughout my time at Imperial for my master's and my PhD. He was always wanting to know how I was getting on and how things were going. And the time and advocacy he gave me when I finished my PhD, and I really wasn't sure about whether I should stay in academia, it was incredible. He put so much trust in me that I could take this role. He had a year's worth of money for a postdoc in the lab. And during that year, he gave me so much support. He put me on platforms to speak to others, and to be empowered by others, especially women. He connected me with very strong female mentors in the field, people like Irene Tracy and Bridget Lum. I was very lucky to have a close connection and partnership with Annette Dolphin, who's my mentor when I got my Springboard Award from the Academy of Medical Sciences. So he made sure that I had incredible women around me while also providing this support that fostered the most collaborative environment. And I was able to spend 9 years with him and learn from that, the kind of team I would like to build, the kind of leader I would like to be. So yeah, he stands out as that individual for me who created so many bridges for me in terms of connections with others. And I had 2 children while I was in my lab with him as a postdoctoral researcher. And again, he just couldn't have been kinder. My children always came first. If they needed to be picked up early from nursery or school, it was never a question. Of course, I needed to leave. I didn't ever have to miss a nativity play. I could be there for every piano recital. So he was definitely the best teacher I could have hoped for. And his values are values that I've carried forward to my life as a PI and as an academic.
I mean, that sounds invaluable. And, it kind of reminds me of when people say about raising children, they say it takes a village to raise a child. It's kind of echoing that within academia, but actually it really takes not just a single supervisor, but their network, their collaborators, they're advocating for you by uplifting your voice amongst other people. And
yeah, and that is exactly what he did. He connected me with all of these wonderful, kind people in the community of pain neuroscience. And that enabled me to, develop my own foundation as a researcher from which I could project and build and eventually lead to obtaining my own lab, my own tenured position back in 2017. And it was in no small part down to the generosity of Tony in terms of the time and support and mentorship he gave.
Yeah, and they, instill really great values for you to take on into your own lab. And that kind of leads me to the next question. What are some ways that you now try and give back?
So, thinking firstly outside my immediate research team, who were always my priority, I always say to those guys, no matter what else is going on, my PhD students and my postdoctoral researchers are my priority. But outside of that, I'm really careful to make sure I respond to every single student email I get. So I've had even in the last few weeks, lots of emails from students interested in coming to spend time to gain experience in research, or do I have a Europe placement opportunity, or are there any PhD opportunities in the lab? And even when I can't offer an opportunity, I still always get back in touch with the individual to perhaps give them direction as to where else they might find opportunities, and to wish them well, and to say good luck with, with wherever the future takes you. So I try and show kindness and support in that way, so that students never feel like they're just sending these messages out to the ether and like no one ever reads them. And I think as well, just making sure that, for example, the students on my module feel supported. So I've popped along. My lectures were all in the first week of the module, but I've popped along every week after to make sure that I'm there in person, even if it's for a 5-10 minute hello, how are you all? Some of them might have more questions to ask. So just, I think, making sure you're available is already a really important way to show support to these students, because they do really matter, and we want them to have a really fun experience and get as much out of their experience of being here as possible. And then in terms of my team, I think it's like I said, it's showing those tokens of appreciation, but also making sure that there's an open line of communication. Again, always available to speak to them. No problem can ever be too big or too small. And making sure that we foster a very supportive, dynamic, close-knit community around us. I feel really lucky. We're here on the 4th floor in the Sir Ernest Chain building, and we've got incredible people around us. Bill Wisden, Stephen Brickley just couldn't have been kinder since I started, in terms of their support. And it really does feed forward in terms of then how the whole team feels welcomed and can interact with other members of the community on the floor.
An additional question to this is, how should we recognise these types of impacts that people have?
Yes, that is a good question, because in some ways we should be doing these small acts of kindness as well as the bigger ones, just because it's the right thing to do, right? So I think I don't necessarily feel that all of these acts have to be recognised, because I think a lot of the time people are doing them for that feed forward mentality. I can't tell you, Josh, the number of small acts of kindness that have been shown to me over the decades in academic research that have never been acknowledged and no one else would ever know about, but I know about them. And I feed forward those small acts in a way where I recognise that those acts won't be recognised or spoken about, but for the individual in that moment, they will have made a difference. And so I suppose a lot of it is the self-satisfaction of knowing that you're being kind. And actually, I think for me, that is the most important attribute. And I say this to my children as well: just be kind. Much better the world would be if everyone's just kind, and give the benefit of the doubt. Don't seek to take offence. Don't look for reasons to be angry. Actually look for reasons to be grateful. Show kindness. And yeah, lots of these small acts of generosity won't ever be acknowledged, but know that you did it, and that you behaved in a way that hopefully will make someone else behave that way. What I really liked was we had the departmental awards in December at the staff meeting, and it made me realise. I sat there and I watched all these names and faces came up, and I sat there thinking, oh my God, I should have nominated. And I thought of all these different people, and I sat there thinking, why didn't I nominate them? And that's a big lesson learned for me. So I've already got 6 names of people that when that email comes around this autumn, I will be putting forward, because it just, you see an email and I didn't stop to think about what that email could mean to these people who show me kindness all the time. Sachin, for example, oh my goodness me, he fields so many emails from me with, research grant questions, applications. I spent the whole of last year bothering him, applying for all these different grants. And I sat there thinking, how did I not put his name forward? This is crazy, So I think that actually going out of your way in an example like that, where you have the opportunity to nominate someone, that's something I should definitely have done. And we could all be better at, right? But also just accepting that not every time are we going to be acknowledged for the good things we do. And that's also okay, because there just isn't enough time in the world to acknowledge everyone's acts of kindness.
Of course, right? And I guess ultimately we shouldn't be motivated to give to receive. Kind of leads me to my next. What kind of advice would you give yourself now if you could look back?
It's difficult to answer this question because I feel like it's the same advice I still need to give myself now, which is that at the end of the day, the most important thing in my life are my loved ones. And I do love my job. I feel so unbelievably lucky to be able to do a job that I love. I'm so passionate about academic research. I love interacting with and sharing knowledge with students. And in the past, there's been so much, I've put a lot of pressure on myself to make that a success. Whereas actually, how I feel about things now is that I come to work every day and I try my best. And if in the end my best isn't good enough, I can leave academia with my head held high, that I tried my best and I just wasn't cut out for it. And actually, that's really freeing. The most important thing for me in life is my family. They are my number one. They will always be my priority. And the next important thing is feeling like I'm contributing to society in a meaningful way. I hope to do that through my work and carrying out this job. But if what I do isn't good enough, that's okay. And I think I've made peace with that. You know, as academics, we're under so much pressure to bring in research money, produce, you know, strong research papers. I don't worry about the rest in terms of mentoring PhD students and guiding, because I know I can do that. But, you know, the research side of things, bringing in funding and getting these big papers, that's not solely in our control. And I think I've finally realised that you can only do your best. So I would do my best to, you know, get competitive grants and produce these wonderful research papers. But it's okay if that isn't good enough, because then this was never the right job for me. And I wish, and that is a narrative that I've had in my head, I would say, for the last maybe 2 or 3 years. And when I look back to my mid-30s, my late 30s, and especially when the children were younger, perhaps that would have been a message that would have helped me in lots of ways, you know, where I felt like my best wasn't good enough. My best was always good enough. I've always worked really hard, always tried my hardest. That has always been good enough. And now I definitely feel more accepting of that narrative. And that's nice, because I'm going to be here, I'm going to do my best. Hopefully it'll be enough. But the most important thing is being my best self as a family member and as a, you know, someone who's got loved ones around me, and I want to always be the best version of myself for them. I say to myself, like, if me trying my best isn't enough, then maybe being an academic was never the right career path for me. And it's almost like giving yourself a break. I feel like it's giving myself a break, that, you know, you have this concern about, will I be able to make this work? Will I be able to persist as an academic? In the end, will I be good enough? And I suppose having that narrative in your head of just try your best, it just takes a bit of that pressure off. I find it works for me anyway. And it's something that if I could go back 10 years to my 35-year-old self, perhaps I'd have said to her, you know, you're trying your best. That's good enough.
And it reminds me, that's exactly what my mum used to say to me when I was younger. You know, I was the first in my family to go to university. And my mum was always like, just try your best and see what happens.
Exactly. And what a great message to tell anyone. You know, these are messages I tell my boys. Just try your best and be a good human. If you try your best and you're kind, that's surely the most any of us can ask of ourselves.
I think that's a really powerful message. Leads me to my last question, which is, if the powers that be, whether that's in the department, the faculty, Imperial, or even the wider kind of academic community, are listening to us chat today, what's something that you would change, considering the theme of give to gain?
Another tricky question, Josh, because I already see members of our Imperial community proactively share information and best practice with those around them. I give my expertise and insights where they might be relevant. And I think we want to build reputations as strong mentors who foster collaborative working environments. And this, of course, is a two-way process. And I already see colleagues who are proactive credit givers, who share knowledge, who offer mentorship, who initiate collaboration. Perhaps feedback elements could be strengthened. You know, all feedback is a gift. This is something that can accelerate the development of those around us. It's important to value improvement over being embarrassed about getting something wrong, for example. But to be honest, I do feel comfortable asking individuals for feedback and also in giving feedback to others. So perhaps my message would be to please everyone continue as you are. My experience in the time I've been here has been so overwhelmingly positive that I can't think of a single aspect that to my mind should be strengthened. I would just hope that everyone continued to be the really kind colleagues that I've experienced so far, and I can promise to do the same.
And what a great positive message to end. So I would like to thank you again, Kirsty, for agreeing to be part of this podcast.
Thanks, Josh.